So, we're going to be talking about Peter the Great. Now, here's some general information. Peter the Great was a part of the Romanov dynasty. These were the leaders of Russia, right? He stood at a staggering 6'10". He was declared co-ruler at the age of 10, so very early. However, he was under a regency until he was 17. He ruled Russia until his death in 1725, and he issued a great deal of social, military, and economic reforms in that time. So let's talk about some of his early life. As I say before, Peter became co-ruler with his half-brother Ivan V, right? They were under a regency of his half-sister, Sophia. Sophia was trying to take power for herself. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. When he was 10 years old, he witnessed a Streltsy revolt. We'll get in more in depth of this later, but for right now, the Streltsy were the personal guards of the Tsar, and this revolt killed the prime minister and a group of nobles. But it was a horrific and traumatizing event for a 10-year-old to experience. So, when he was 17, he began to work to undermine his half-sister, right, in an attempt to seize power. This was eventually successful, and she was forced to become a nun. This is pretty significant because that basically forced her out of the family. Thus, he became the sole ruler of Russia when he was only 17 years old. Now, going back to the Streltsy revolt, right? As I said before, this was a revolt by the personal guards of the Tsar, right? These men were armed with firearms and polearms, and they were the elite infantry. They were the best that the Russian military had to offer. So, when in 1682, the guards attacked the palace in Moscow, it was a horrific event. Not many people could stop them. And it led to the death of the former Tsar's prime minister, as well as a few other noblemen. And this somewhat traumatized Peter, but it created this hatred for the Kremlin and the former capital of Moscow, right? So, he would eventually create St. Petersburg and make it his new capital for Russian life. And this is similar to what Louis XIV did. If you all remember from AP Euro, Louis XIV would experience a severe revolt in Paris, and thus he hated the city. So he moved the capital to the Versailles Palace. And this is pretty similar to what Peter the Great did. But first order of business for Peter the Great was to modernize and strengthen Russia. So the best course of action was to build a navy, right? But this would prove challenging, just due to the cold water ports in the north. By cold water ports, I mean they would freeze over in the winter. You can't really build a navy somewhere where it wouldn't be able to escape for half of the year. So he needed to find somewhere warmer. So he chose the Crimean Khanate. Now, this was in the Black Sea, as we can see here. And he declared war against the Crimean Khanate, right? And it was fairly successful. It ended in an uneasy truce due to the Khanate being a puppet state of the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire is a global power at this time. And but all in all, it led to control of a warm water port, and so he was able to begin building a fleet there, trying to start revitalizing the Russian military.